Hello, everybody. Gelly Osofsky here. This live is about talking to our children and families about sexual abuse. We have gotten cut off several times with my guest, Shauna Erinson from Magenu, a sexual abuse advocacy program organization actually in Israel. So we're going to give it one more shot. Otherwise, I'll just go live myself and we'll go from there. I don't know what's going on here, but okay, let's try this. Hi, we'll give it one more shot. I don't know what's going on. I keep seeing the little circles over your face, but
that's what I keep seeing over yours, so I can't tell if it's on my end or your end.
Okay, wow. All right, well, let's give it one more shot. Otherwise, what we'll do is maybe we'll do something on Zoom and we'll share the link if this doesn't work. I'm trying to think actually if I should just switch to get you on Zoom as well. So we just have that option available. Do you want to do that?
Sure, I don't mind that.
Okay, so lighting is bad. Okay. Let me just set us up on Zoom real quick and I'll give you an invite and let's just do this so at least we'll have it recorded because I'm nervous that this is going to flunk again. All right, so here we go. How do I give you an invite?
Send it through WhatsApp.
Okay, let me do that. Hold on.
Okay, sorry everybody.
Okay, I'm just going to shift the lighting. When I do Zoom and this during the day, I just add some lighting where I'm at. So that should help. I've got these big lights because I sit right near a window. Okay, I'm seeing us have a problem here as well again. So what we are going to do is I'm going to try to read or maybe, hold on. Okay. Just 1 second. Hi there, how are you? I'm going to hit record in a second, but I am wondering if you can give our listeners the Zoom information, like that they can jump on here if we get disconnected, but I'm going to keep on live on Instagram as we're here. Okay. Shauna, did I lose you? Okay.
I'm here.
Okay, so I'm going to do a view for both of us right here, and we're going to hit record. I'll stay on Instagram for the people that are on Instagram, and I think they can probably hear us. Okay, let's do this.
Okay. I don't think I can be on Instagram.
Recording in progress.
What?
I don't think I can Instagram and on Zoom at one time.
Okay.
From my device, but I will, so I'm on Zoom.
Okay, so Shauna is on Zoom. I've got my sound quality on the highest, and if you can't hear us, what I am going to recommend is, let's see, can you message me the Zoom information, because now I'm on multiple devices and I can just tell our listeners if they want to join us on Zoom. Or let's just get started. Does anybody want to share in the comments if you actually hear me? Shauna, if you want to just speak up, we'll ask people if they can hear you.
Sure. Yeah,
okay.
I don't think I'm on Instagram. I think I'm just
yeah, you're off.
Okay,
I'm adjusting what we got here with the lighting, and let's do this. Okay. All right, we're going to try the best we can.
Yes.
Okay, so let's give this one more shot.
Mm-hmm.
And let's do it. Otherwise, we will share the recording. Okay, so I'm Gelly Asafsky, child and family therapist. I'm going to skip the massive introduction. We are here to talk. It's the fourth time's the charm. Well, maybe actually we should, because we're having the Zoom meeting. Okay, hold on. One second. Stop.
Recording stopped.
Here we go. We're starting.
Recording
Okay.
in progress.
We're starting from here. Hello, everybody. This is Gelly Asafsky, child and family therapist. We are joined today by Shauna Erinson from Mugain, an organization in Israel that's a sexual abuse advocacy organization in the Haredi and the Frum community. We'll take turns introducing ourselves, and we are going to jump right in to talk about the Chaim Walder suicide and the anxiety that's being brought up about sexual abuse. How do we talk to our young kids, our teenagers, adults? How do we process this all? Okay, so let me jump in. I'll go first. Gelly Asafsky, child and family therapist in Monsey, New York for over 20 years now. I am a registered play therapy supervisor. I am an EMDR consultant, and I coordinate our local EMDR crisis response. It's called a TRN, Trauma Recovery Network, I think. And this is part of the EMDR Humanitarian Assistance Program, where we go into crises in the community, natural disasters, hate crimes, terrorism, bad things. Sadly, they do happen. And we have a protocol to help and provide pro bono services to our community. And this sadly fits right in. It's the Chaim Walder suicide. People are reeling, including me. And I'm going to say that on record. It is a lot. Okay, Shauna, I'm going to check my volume to make sure, yeah, we're on the highest sound here. And why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Okay, I'm Shauna Erinson. I'm the director of Mugain. Mugain is an organization that deals with sexual abuse in the Frum community. We offer programs both aimed for raising awareness as well as education, workshops for parents, working with both social media and media, mental health services, which includes referrals for therapy and other mental health resources, running support groups, working with victims to help them access funding for therapy if that's needed, as well as advocacy and investigation work supporting victims through law enforcement process, whether that's the police or social services or the courts, Batei Din, as well as investigations working in collaboration with law enforcement and the media. That is, in great summary, some of what we do.
It's huge, and we need people like you out there, and I'm glad you exist, and I'm almost sorry that it took this to get us to meet and have this discussion. If somebody can just put in the comments on Instagram and let me know if you hear what Shauna is saying, I would appreciate that, and that would help me know if you can hear. Okay, and I will post the recording on Zoom afterwards to Instagram if this wasn't entirely clear. So we're going to talk about the 3 areas, and it's a lot to bite, to chew over in one go, but just talking to children, talking to teenagers, talking to young adults, and especially when a spouse or family members may actually not be in agreement, and a victim of sexual abuse or a mother who has these fears. It's a mother's worst nightmare. It's a father's worst nightmare. But sometimes the men are in denial, don't feel it's as important, and feelings can be shut down. We also want to talk about the fact that if you want your kids to have your perspective on this issue, You need to talk about it to them because the kids are talking about it in school. If they haven't talked about it yet, they will be talking about it in the future. And if we take another crazy story like the Lev Tahar ongoing horror story, you know what I'm talking about, the cult. I just had a client, a child, just come home and tell his parents, hey, mommy, what's these people left that tell their kids to kill themselves, that murder babies? Well, then, if the mother has not found it important to discuss this, and I understand why, a month after the story came out, now the child, who maybe, I'm not giving a specific age, but it's the 7, 8, 9-year-old age, is now talking about it, and they've heard about it from their friends, and luckily they are coming to talk to their parents about a cult, a Jewish cult that is talking about sacrificing children. So we need to talk about this.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I will give you the floor, and we'll start a conversation about the children. I guess that's where, and there's, like you said,
Sure.
There's crossover.
So much crossover,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that first of all, it's important to just be aware, and I'm packing in probably 3 hours worth of, trying to pack in 3 hours worth of information into a half hour.
Yes, of course.
But that talking to children about sexual abuse or about difficult topics in general can never be a one-time conversation. Just as these kinds of things are difficult for us to process, it's incredibly difficult for a child to process, or really potentially impossible, certainly all in one go. And it's not a healthy way to break down important information. This is something that we want them to be able to, grow to understand and to process in a healthy way. This needs to be an ongoing conversation, brought up at appropriate times, and using painful situations like this one as learning opportunities, for both us and our children together, to better educate ourselves and to stay safe. So, starting with that, I think another really important just piece to keep in mind, as we're going through, as we talk about this with our kids, is the importance of first working on feeling at least somewhat comfortable. And that might sound funny because it's pretty much impossible to feel comfortable talking about horrible. But to get to the point where it is not so shocking and horrifying to us that we are passing that feeling and that anxiety over to our kids. And some of that sometimes has to boil down to being clear with them that we don't know all the answers, and that's okay. It's a very brave thing and really, really potentially beautiful modeling to let our kids know that we don't have all the answers, that we're not 100% positive about everything, and that's okay, and that we're all always learning and growing. And if they have questions that you don't know the answer to, telling them that that's all right, and you'll do your best to research it either for them or with them, and ask people who maybe know more. Like this is really healthy, positive, growthful ideas and concepts that we have a potential to share with our kids now when we're dealing with something, just grappling with something so awful and difficult. So that's certainly, very important. Speaking to children, obviously, in a way that's appropriate for them, which is why I am a very big believer in educating, children through their parents, in obviously, putting aside situations of extreme dysfunction where a parent is the abuser, God forbid, which does sometimes happen, but in situations that are not that kind of extreme situation, it really is ideally the parents that can best be there for their child. Parents should, knows their child best. And again, assuming you as a parent, as a human being, can get over the extreme discomfort that you might have as a person with all of this. There's really no one better than you to talk to your child. And that's so important. So all of those things, I know I'm being very general because we don't have time to get into too many specifics. And that's something we do usually in like 2-hour workshops.
100%. 100%. And this is sort of the time of the what I always say, it's a shas hatzchak. It's like, we need to take care of this. We need to tackle this right now. You know, whenever these stories happen, I get on and I talk about, this is how you talk to your children. These are the books I recommend. I Said No is my favorite book. It's really clear. It's by someone, Zachary King. What's the mother's name? I'll show the book. You give me a second.
Sure.
This is the book that I recommend. Wow, it's not zooming in properly, but available on Amazon. This is the best book that I have found. I put on my Instagram several other books that people recommended. I sometimes feel like we need one way to talk to our kids, and this book tackles it all. It's about red flags and green flags. When your child is old enough to talk, you need to start talking to them about it, because I am the one seeing 3-year-olds that have been sexually abused. I wouldn't have known this when my kids were young. Ouch! Crazy things happen. And this book is particularly helpful because it gives parents the tools to use so that you don't have to think about it. You don't have to overthink it. If you don't want to read it with your kid, you can have the information in your head to talk to an older child. Red flags, green flags. And this is the Chaim Walder crazy story. Lots of people had red flags, yet they didn't know what to say. They didn't know they needed to say.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I'm at. This is the psychoeducation part of it, where we need, like you said, these opportunities to talk to our children. And then when something big happens, we say, that's why. That's why you need to talk to your kids. That's why no one's allowed to touch you. When my children were 4 and 6 years old, and they're now adults, our next door neighbor, sadly, a man who wrote Svarim, sexually abused 2 children. And, you know, I don't want to get into the details of it, but it was a really harrowing time for us, because we needed to talk to our children, who were very young and innocent, about a bad thing. And the neighbor got divorced over this, and this wasn't going away. And I don't even think I was a therapist at that point. And what I said to my children was, like, using my own head, I was like, okay, so girls, do you know that there are men? Most men are good, most people are good, but do you know men that have a sickness, that they like to touch kids' private parts? Did our neighbor ever touch your private parts? And they looked at me and they went, no. And I said, good. You are never to cross the steps over to our neighbor's house. And you need to learn this as a lesson. No one is ever allowed to touch you, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And both of my daughters, independent of each other, came around as teenagers and said to me on walks, just random times, not when I was expecting it, nothing had gone on. And they said, Mommy, whatever happened with that neighbor? You know, the guy who had this illness, this huge problem? We thought you were so wacky telling us this. But you know what? Whatever happened to him? Is he still around? Is he still hurting kids? And it was an opportunity to take it to the next level, the layer that was appropriate as teenagers to talk to them. So even if you don't know how to do it, I didn't know how to do it. But Shauna, I don't know. I mean, anyone can hear this. Did I mess up, or did I do the right thing for my kids? I didn't know anything, but I got the information to them.
There weren't resources like there are available for Hashem now. That did not exist then so much, or at all.
That's what I did.
What I always tell parents, because so often when people contact us for workshops, it's because there's been some sort of explosive incident in their community. And now they're going, well, what do we do? And, and they're asking, what do we do about this case? And it's not really about this case, because this case at this point, people say, I need to warn my my child, like you said, that's the one thing that I would say that I would, expand upon that we know now. Warning your child about this one person, obviously it's important. If you happen to know that you're living next door to a predator, obviously you want your child to be aware that this person is not someone they should ever be going anywhere with. But what's even more important is to use it as an opportunity to talk about the issues in general, because this person, every child in the neighborhood now knows is dangerous. I mean, he's the suck on himself right now. Right. Everybody knows that. Every child knows what he looks like, and the issue is, what about all the other people in the community potentially? And if you live in a big neighborhood, there's a lot more than one who are potentially dangerous people, and you don't know about them yet. Right. And those are the people that we need to be, we need to keep in mind. That's a lot more dangerous than the guy who we all know about. Right. And that's where talking to children about trusting their gut. Yes. And, the feeling that when something makes you feel uncomfortable, the difference between secrets and surprises, that we don't keep secrets from our parents, that nothing that they ever do will ever make you not love them or not, look out for them. Being careful about when we discuss these issues, doing it in a way that doesn't scare them. And what I mean by that, more than just not imparting too much anxiety, but aside from that, also not telling them that if anyone hurt them, that you would kill that person, because that's actually
very important. Because manipulators, groomers, crazy people, mentors. I don't want to say this, but it needs to be said. Rabbanim, askanim, mentors, sports coaches, arts and crafts teachers, your next door lovely neighbor. We don't know where predators live. So giving the general red flag, green flag information to our children in a culturally sensitive manner, very important, because I've heard a lot of people saying, and I'm going to go on record as saying that you must tell your children the names of their private parts, and then parents freeze. They're like, I don't feel comfortable with that. No, you say it the way your child understands it. Telling a child private parts, your front private parts, your back private parts, if that's the world you live in, that is totally, totally okay. Your kid needs to understand. You don't need to be traumatized if you don't feel comfortable using anatomically correct words. And I work in a primarily Hasidic community. That's not what we do. And Baruch Hashem, kids get it. You just have to give them information, and you have to give it to them in layered, nuanced ways throughout their childhood. Not too much and not too little. I always say the birthday is a great time, not on the day of the birthday, but it's a time to find a way to sneak it in again. Sneak the conversation in.
I'm a very big believer in using day-to-day opportunities that are, obviously, if I'm going to bring up personal safety or abuse or anything of that nature at the Shabbos table Friday night, like that's going to be really out of left field. Yeah. It's going to be like, what? Like that's a little, like, it's so off. It's not the context is off. Yeah. But if I take the opportunity when my child is bathing, when I'm bathing my young child, and, I'm teaching them how to wash themselves, and I say, as they're washing themselves, it's great if you clean your own private parts, because it's great, your private parts are private, and no one should ever touch you in your private parts unless it's your parents and they need to help you. But if you can do it yourself, that's even better. That there's a context there. They're in the shower, they're washing their private parts. It's not like, wait, what? This is so weird. It's not at the Shabbos table. It's not, there is a context. It feels normal and, a little more natural, and use those opportunities throughout the day to bring it up so that it just becomes part of the conversation. It's something that my kids have heard since they were so little that it's like so not a big deal to them anymore, that they just know. They just know. And when the Chaim Walder case came out publicly, my kids already knew what they were talking about. They don't know exactly what sexual abuse is, but they understand the idea that there are people that sometimes touch children inappropriately. They understood that's what had happened here. There was already a lot of context that they had, and it really helped me to have a conversation with them because they already kind of understood the issues. And, and like you said, the layering, you can then, there's a little bit more and a little bit more. So they're not just getting flooded with all this information at once, but you're kind of building up.
Yeah.
Obviously, right now, we're all being flooded with all this information because there's no choice. It's a circumstance outside of ourselves.
Exactly. And I want to say, Shauna, one of my concerns has always been is that you need the information. You need to know, like the example of bathing a child. Some parents may get anxious and then they say too much, right? So I love how you describe this. It's just, it's nuanced. The flavor is almost can be missed on a day-to-day basis. You see someone in the store that seems a little weird. You walk the other way and you say, you know what, kids? I don't like what I see. That doesn't look like I want to be there with you. And you go down the other aisle. That's building layer on layer of conversation. So they come home with the story about something, kids were in the bathroom and they were touching each other. They were laughing. They were climbing over stalls. Kids will be kids, and then kids do inappropriate things. Another layer to talk about. So you know what? That was inappropriate. That's not how we do it. Private parts are private. Everybody goes to the bathroom. Actually, that's not okay. Glad you came to talk to me about that.
Oh.
I'm losing you again. And give us a minute. You're back.
I think I'm back. Yes. So there's something that I really like to do that I have found to be really helpful, and I think even more so for parents that find the subject particularly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And for parents from all parents from the Haredi community, from the Hasidic community, where they find it trickier how exactly to bring this up. They want to talk about personal safety, but they really want to steer clear of getting into any talks that will really reference sexuality.
Yes.
And how to do that.
Yeah.
And I have found, I don't really remember when I started doing this, but a number of years ago, I started with my kids. I would tell these stories. Now, I work in this field. They know that I work with protecting children, something. So I would tell them stories that as if came up at work. That I heard the story this week, and I was thinking about it, and I wonder what you guys think of it. And just for example, there was a kid who his parents had gone away. They left him at home with a friend, 10 years old. They left him with some money to go to the makolet and buy himself a yogurt, some manachama, like a soup or something for dinner. He was supposed to buy healthy food, a cottage cheese, whatever, while they were gone. And the friend was going to go with him when they went to the makolet, and the friend said, just buy candy. Like, your parents aren't going to find out. Like, who cares? They gave you money. It'll be done by the time you get home. And the kid wasn't sure. In the end, he bought the candy. And he got home and he ate the candy, and the whole afternoon he felt so guilty because he realized that he had kind of lied to his parents. And also he felt like maybe he stole from them because he took their money and didn't spend it the way he was supposed to. And he felt more and more guilty, and it was making his stomach hurt. But he was really afraid to tell them because he knew that if he told them, he wasn't just going to get himself in trouble, but he was going to get his friend in trouble. That he really felt bad about. And he really didn't know what to do. And finally, the next day, he couldn't sleep the whole night. He couldn't take it anymore. And he decided to tell his parents. And I asked my kids, what do you think he made the right choice? And they had a whole discussion about it. And that's just an example, but that's a scenario that touches on so many topics that are so relevant when it comes to sexual abuse. The idea of, I feel like I'm kind of responsible here, but also if I tell I'm going to get someone else in trouble, am I responsible for getting someone else in trouble? Lies of omission, these concepts that are so tied in. So we've had a whole conversation. We've talked about issues that are really, really so tied into what happens if a child is, God forbid, sexually abused without making any mention.
I love it. I love it. And
nothing about abuse.
Right. So the idea of using lying, kids lie, but to teach a moral story, and really put in there how the kid felt carrying a secret. Because one of the things when it comes to sexual abuse is that children feel a lot of shame. And I've actually been in the position as a therapist where the mother is called, the child has been sexually abused, has been doing something inappropriately, and the kid's refusing to talk about it. They're coming in, they're one of my clients actually, they have a good relationship with me. Shh, you're not talking about this. You are not. And the mother says, well, we have to talk about this. And I say, it's okay. I don't need to know, because I already know. The mother told me. I don't need to create more shame. I said, you know what? Let's just do some work around this story that clearly there's a conflict around. And then I go around the bush. And I say exactly what I know is happening. So, many kids, when there's a problem, and there's something happened and they don't want to share it, they feel embarrassed. They feel like I'm going to think that there's something wrong with them, that they're bad. Well, here's the thing. And by the way, do not tell me what happened, okay? But I'm wondering if you feel like I'm going to judge you. Oh, I love you so much. But do you feel like if you say something, I'm really going to be upset? All right, so let's not talk about it, but I'm wondering, is this about, did the Rebbe potch you? Did someone touch you inappropriately? Did someone grab your snack? So I'll throw it into the context of potential things. And even if the child never talks to me about it, look, I have my ways of helping them. But the first thing is, and this is when a child comes home and they have a secret, we can offer them, like you said, we can share stories the next day at bedtime around. It doesn't have to be about this topic, but the idea that a child feels guilty, feels shame, they did something wrong, they didn't tell their mother, that can be woven into stories. So I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think we got to find the ways that, work ourselves up. Also, you talked about layers. There's also layers in parenting of our own comfort levels and working as much as we can towards getting to the point where we feel comfortable talking about things that are hard. I think specifically, just to get back to this particular situation and case that we've all had thrown into our faces so much over the last few days, there's a couple things that I think are really important to keep in mind when talking to kids about this situation. Well, actually, this is one of those things that I think crosses, it's talking to kids, talking to teenagers, and talking to adults. And that's the idea that, sometimes when there's a very public figure, and something terrible happens with that public figure, we all feel a need to weigh in on it. Some of us in our professional capacities should or have to, or, it's necessary. But as far as just the general community, that I need to say something about this particular case. And what people sometimes forget, or are forgetting, I think, so much when they're commenting on social media, they're making comments around the Shabbos table, during the Kiddush, during whatever it might be, wherever they are, that they're just talking to others, is that Chaim Walder is not hear what they're saying to their friends at the Shabbos table and doesn't see what they're posting on Facebook. But the people that do are their children, their neighbors, their friends, their community. And the survivors that are hearing what they're saying they're listening carefully, and they're getting the message of whether or not you are a safe person, or whether or not this community is a safe community for me to ever tell my story. Because whether or not you believe what happened, what didn't happen, it's kind of irrelevant to your life. And it's a hard thing for me to say that, because even as I say it, it's like, how can you say it's irrelevant to life? This is so painful for everyone to process. But what I mean is, practically, in terms of how it practically affects your day-to-day life, unless you are directly connected to the Walder family, which gives us a different situation, or one of his victims, this situation doesn't affect you literally directly personally. But what does is again, what all the survivors around us are going to be hearing in the messages. They're the ones that are reading this. Our children are the ones that are hearing what we're saying. And if we say, well, I don't believe this, there's no way this could be possible, Lashon Hara killed him, we're sending a message that this isn't something that we're really going to believe so easily. And we're shutting down the potential for disclosures that we must be open to hearing. And then the second piece is we are also, and I think so many people aren't even thinking about this aspect of it, but I know we talked about this a little bit yesterday. There's a certain level of legitimizing suicide as an acceptable exit to a terrible situation, but giving children a message that, the idea that Lashon Hara killed Chaim Walder means that someone outside of him forced him to do this, which means this was unacceptable. Like, he did this because he was driven to it. He didn't have a choice. We cannot. That is a absolutely horrible message that we can't be sending our children. And it's challenging because we also don't want to be stigmatizing people with mental illness or stigmatizing people or families that have lost loved ones, unfortunately, very much, even in the Frum communities, in the Haredi communities, have lost family members to suicide. We don't want to be stigmatizing the people that suffer for years with mental illness. But we can also not be giving our children or our teens, especially our teens, the message that this was, well, we didn't have a choice. Suicide is just an option. Sometimes it's just another choice.
And it's so important. And this goes into the crossover between young adults and teens, boys, girls. Stop playing the news. I can say it out loud here. I have not gone online to look at anything that has been posted about this. I didn't watch the Levaya. I processed what I needed to process. I spoke to who I needed to speak. And then I was like, well, 1 minute, how can I serve? How can I help people? And it took me a lot of wrangling in my brain to bite it down to 2 layers. 1, no matter what you do, how bad you are, come talk to your parents. Number 2, suicide is never the answer. Goodbye, Charlie. And referencing back to these 2 things over and over and over again. Lashon Hara, we all talk about it. We all learn about it. Anything that is not involved right now in your own personal life, or if you don't need it, if you're not dealing with it because you're a victim yourself or because it's brought up fear, don't talk about it. These are the things we need to talk. If you're a victim, go get help. If you're fearful, now go talk about how to get support, how do you talk to your children, how to talk to teenagers, how to talk to your husband, your family members who may be saying, strange things. And it's really strange. I talked to my father yesterday, who unfortunately is involved in a lot of, he's a Dayan, and he is involved, unfortunately, in a lot of terrible stories with divorce. And I said to him, Tati, actually, I was on the phone with my mother, and she put my father on the phone. She's like, tell Tati, and my father said, years ago, this happened all the time. Sadly, we didn't have the supports back then. It's not like human nature has changed. And this is the crux of the conversation. It's like, these things have always happened. Now, we're in a place where we need to get help. We can get online. We can get on Zoom. We can share the information that we need to get support so abuse stops. So a mother of a young child that comes home and says they were abused by a Rebbe makes the phone call, gets them help, makes a report, right? I always say I'm never the judge. Did it happen or did it not happen? I have a Rav who I consult with when I hear these stories, and I can say 100% of the time, and there have been very few situations, 100% of the time, it's like you need to make a report. So you need to have Das Torah. You need to have Das Torah who understands sexual abuse. There is Das Torah that doesn't understand this.
Oh, yeah.
So it
That's
needs to be
that I think
said.
People don't,
really,
I think people don't realize that. It's like you wouldn't go to your regular community Rav to discuss a complicated situation involving a miscarriage or a surgical procedure that's where there's it's a DNA necessitous, like whether it's not
Right.
a comment. You wouldn't go to your a standard, a standard like that. It's just not.
It's not a halacha shaila that you ask your local posek. If you're concerned about sexual abuse, turn to someone who understands sexual abuse. Turn to an organization that you trust that deals with sexual abuse. In Muncie, we have Amudim, and many people turn to Amudim when they are concerned about sexual abuse. And like I said, I never act alone. I don't accept this responsibility on myself. And my Rav and I always talk about the fact that I'm a mandated reporter. And it is very, very hard because bad things do happen. What are the statistics? Every year they change them. When I went on RAIN, I said 1 in 9 girls is sexually abused, and I thought the number was higher. 1 in 12 boys is sexually abused. It doesn't discriminate across cultures. I had thought it was 1 in 6. I guess the numbers have, depends which.
Here it's 1 in 5.
Okay, so those are the U.S. numbers. So again, you need to have the right support. If you need support, go get support. Don't talk around the supper table around this. And I was so proud of my daughter as a mother of little children. And I called her. I said, did you hear what happened? She's like, Mommy, don't tell me unless I need to know, because I want to have a happy family. I want to, if I need to know, if there's something I need to tell my kids, please tell me. If I need to know for myself, just tell me. I don't want my life to go under because of crazy situations, right? We don't want that. And we continue to talk about it. And late last night, we had a long conversation about this. But her immediate thing, because I'm a therapist and there are lots of things that worry me, was, Mommy, it's supper time. And I need to be a good mommy right now. I need to put Layla to bed. I need to put Maya to bed. And tell me what I need to know. And then we processed on multiple levels. Don't take your families down with you. Get the support wherever you are. You're on here live. You're hearing this Zoom meeting. Take actual steps to talk to your kids, to get the support to talk to your spouses, your teenagers, but then let it die down. Don't legitimize it. It's over. He's dead.
Right.
He's a cop-out. I'm not the Basin. I'm not the Basin Shomala. I don't have the wherewithal to carry this. But I'm going to use.
And we shouldn't. It's very
too much.
heavy. It's very, very heavy.
It's too much.
I mean, we live in a day and age where, because of the free flow of information, we are inundated constantly with very painful stories. I mean, if you picture 200 years ago, if you lived in a shtetl in Poland, if there was somebody in your community who was very sick or a terrible story happened, you heard about that. You didn't know about anything that was happening 3 shtetls over, certainly not on the other side of the world. Today, we're constantly being inundated with davening for this one who's sick and davening for that one. I mean, from all over, we are flooded with a tremendous amount of difficult, also happy,
right?
But
good
also
things
very
too.
difficult information.
Right?
Yes,
right.
But way more difficult information than human beings historically ever had to deal with processing. So we have a natural reaction to want to know, to feel. It feels like if we know, we can, we can better wrap our heads around it. But it's true, it doesn't always work like that. We need to know what we do need to know. We need to talk to our children to the degree that we need to educate them, to protect them, to empower them, and to empower ourselves with the information we need. But the over intake of painful information, it really does just feed a tremendous amount of anxiety and stress that isn't really conducive for us.
And I would be horrified if my grandson, who just turned 3 years old, started talking and understanding the word suicide, because that's happening in potentially your family. Okay, if you're talking about this issue around the supper table without a filter, your child is going to go and say suicide, suicide, and it's cross-wiring. Someone killed himself. Oh, mommy, people die, people kill themselves. Well, how are you gonna talk to a 3-year-old about this? They don't need to know. They don't need to know. It's the children that are the school-age children and the children that are around you that are hearing from social media, from cheder, from the street, from the neighbors, and their classrooms. Those kids needs to be discussed with them. It's crazy. So could we just take a moment to really address where people can get support? Now, I know your organization does so much to help educate and then to help victims. So are you in the US at this point? Where are you? You're in Israel.
We're all over Israel. We do offer some support to some victims in America or in other countries as well, actually, when the case has a connection to Israel. So sometimes their abuser moved here, or they moved from here, or something like that.
Yeah.
So then we're in contact with a lot of victims in other countries, but it's when there's a connection to here. With that said, the one program that we do offer around the world basically is the workshops that we do. We've had a surprising, I didn't really expect when Corona started, we had to move our workshops online. Mm-hmm. And I call them workshops, not, lectures, because they're very interactive. And when we started doing them on Zoom. And I was very worried that it's hard on Zoom, the little heads that it's, but we've actually had a lot more success that we keep them very small. It's usually not more than 20, maximum 30 mothers at a time, or parents, depending on what people prefer. And we've done them so because we started doing them on Zoom, and it was very successful. So we started offering them for communities outside of Israel as well. So we had a lot of communities of Hebrew speakers actually from other countries that are on shlichus in different places, doing different things in different countries in Europe. And so we did programs for those communities, and then in English as well for some communities in Canada and anyway. So that is something that we can offer. And if there's anyone that's interested, they're welcome to reach out. Obviously, we do them in Hebrew and in English and in French, actually.
And is there a cost to these workshops? No.
Usually there's a suggested donation here of like $5, well, 20 shekel.
Okay.
But it's absolutely not necessary. Some people donate more, some people not in a position don't donate at all. It's totally fine either way.
So we can post that for everybody, just in case you want to attend a 2-hour workshop to learn how to talk to your children, learn how to deal with this heavy topic of sexual abuse. Yeah. This is now available. And I want to say Zoom and the online world. I mean, I had tremendous resistance to doing therapy online, to doing groups online. Forget about my near death with COVID. But after all of that passed, I still was resistant. And then necessity, what they say, is the mother of invention. Zoom is comfortable. It's in the home. You don't need a babysitter when your kids are sleeping or they're in school, or, the baby's napping. And I have found that when you have a good facilitator, right, and you're attending a legitimate program, Zoom works. So, and actually the telehealth laws are that when we do a Zoom meeting, according to US law, we need to provide somebody on the back end with a telephone or another way of, and there's a percentage depending on how many people are on the call, to provide support if needed. So it's interesting, but systems are being developed. So if anybody needs support online, whether it's support to manage your anxiety, whether it's support for anything, if there is a legitimate organization or a mental health facility that is offering programming online, I would say reach out for it if you need it. And don't get stuck in only in person, because depending on where you live, and we're talking to lots of people, that may not be an option in the crazy COVID world that we live in. Okay, so I think I had one question that we did not tackle. If you could just take it for a couple of minutes, it's understanding the grooming process. Parents felt confused about that, conflicted about that. How does somebody get groomed? How do you go over someone's natural defense system when they know?
Well, there's generally a process, not generally, there's usually a process where that starts with the first of all, the abuser has to identify a victim, a child that they see as being vulnerable. And I say that with caution because that sort of implies that something's wrong with the child that makes them like that, but that's not what it means. Meaning that in that moment, they are vulnerable. That doesn't mean that there's something wrong with the child, but just that something about the scenario at that point makes them vulnerable.
Right, they want bubble gum. That's it. It could be just as much as they didn't have bubble gum.
Their mother just had a baby.
Yeah,
their mother just had a baby. Things are busy.
Exactly.
That's not, I mean.
Exactly.
So they've identified the child, and then they have to gain access to the child, access to the child, and then access to the child alone. And then there's breaking down, and that can be, looking, and that's why always a red flag, that I should say that, we call it an orange flag, is somebody who really wants to spend a lot of time with a child.
The adult-child differential, a teenager that wants to spend time, or a Zadie, or somebody that really, really, it's an unusual interest in a child.
And adults usually, and children know, that adults usually want to spend time with children in like limited doses. I mean, even for us as parents of our own children, our children are used to us saying, we don't usually want to sit with them all day long every day, Shabbos afternoon. We play 3 games of cards with them. We say, okay, you go read a book with your sister. I want to go sit and talk at the Shabbos table with the other adults. Children are used to the idea that generally people want to spend time with other people their own age. When there's an adult or a much, much older child who is like constantly going out of their way to spend time with the children and not people their own age, even the children sometimes pick up. And I always find it interesting how sometimes the children pick up before the adults that something is off here, because it's weird. That guy's weird. He's always coming outside to hang out with the kids during school instead of being with the other teenagers. Like, wow, all the other teenagers want to hang out with teenagers. They don't want to hang out with the little kids. This guy's always coming out to sit with the little kids. Like, what's wrong with him? But parents think, oh, it's so nice. He wants to help watch the kids. No, that's an orange flag. That's concerning. And so once they've, gained access to the child alone, then it's breaking through the touch barrier and breaking through the natural sort of the boundaries barrier. Sometimes that starts with showing there's something that a lot of predators do, which is they sort of manipulate the child into breaking rules. So they'll offer the child, you want to watch a video on my phone. So we're talking about raising children. They're not allowed to watch videos on a smartphone. They watch a video, and it's an innocuous video. It's not even an inappropriate per se video, but they're not supposed to watch a video. And then it becomes an inappropriate video or even pornography. That's a very popular grooming tactic. And then at that point,
and then there's shame.
The child's very embarrassed and nervous, but they know, and the predator sometimes will tell them, if you tell anyone, I'm going to tell them you watched the video on my phone. Now, in the child's mind, we're now even. Meaning, you're doing bad things, but I also did a bad thing. The child does not have the nuance of the vast difference between watching a video on a phone and molesting a child. That's not, they don't see that those are not the same thing, and that their parents are not going to see them as the same thing. They just know they broke a rule, he's breaking a rule, we're both going to get in trouble. That's a very common, that's just an example, but that idea of like sort of causing the child to break a rule, to break curfew, to break is to eat something, do something, watch something that they weren't supposed to do. So they're now sort of rule breakers together. And then once there's breaking through the touch barrier of tickling, a lot of excessive touching. So the child sort of can gradually get more and more comfortable with physical touch, with any physical touch, even if they didn't really want it. But I just want to give you a hug, but isn't it fun? We're playing a tickle game, it's fun. And then that is where ultimately it leads to actual abuse or touching of private parts. And then at that point, the abuser needs to maintain control. So that is either through threats or manipulation or promises of treats. And there are many reasons why children don't tell. But sometimes a child might, enjoy the attention. They might be confused because they feel like something about this is off. But if it, most abuse, this is something that parents don't sometimes realize. Most sexual abuse doesn't hurt physically. And children can sometimes get confused because at first they think it feels good, but it also feels weird. And children don't have that sort of maturity of the nuance that something, obviously if someone's hitting them or hurting them, so that's bad. We as humans from very young age, we avoid pain.
Right, and that'll sometimes literally be blurted out to a sibling in a vulnerable moment than the parents. Okay, it may not. When something bad happens, it may actually come to a younger sibling or somebody that they can get it out, but they're not going to be ashamed. And now we're counting on that younger sibling to go to the parent. Sometimes I see it as a trade of gifts, that they buy sexual abuse for gifts. Things that may be very cheap, Revy cards, bubble gum, little toys, and cookies.
I had a victim who told me she could never look at those cookies. He always gave her the same chocolate cookies, and she felt like because she took the cookies and she wanted the cookies and she kept going back to get the cookies. And then she tried to get out before he would abuse her, but then he would abuse her, and then she felt like it was her fault because she
wanted the cookies. Right.
Yeah.
So that's why, if we understand the grooming process, we understand, and this is with children, this is with teenagers that are groomed, and young adults, actually, because we now have therapist allegations about targeting young women. Crazy world, right? So the grooming process is emotional at first. It's gifts. It's taking advantage of someone who may be overwhelmed or overlooked in the moment. So if you see your child being a little off, talk to them, pay extra attention, okay? Be careful. We don't want to over worry parents, but taking that layered approach, like we discussed, really is going to make a difference. Do not overdo it, overkill it, because then your kids will not believe you. They'll say, oh, this is your thing. You always talk about don't sit on a person's lap, don't go there, don't go there, and then they tune you out. So the layered approach that we're talking about, getting the education, taking a course, and I know we have, who is it, Debbie Fox? I'm not sure, in the U.S., she's in a lot of school systems.
She does programs for school. Yeah,
right? But parents, I think what you're doing. I think it's called. Yeah, what is the name of the program called?
The Magano International, I think. Magano International, I think it's called.
Yeah, but parents, right? If not, we'll look it up. But we're talking about directly to parents. If you want support around this issue, if you want to learn, all right, this is the baseline. I said no. This is my best book from 20 years of practice. You may have another recommendation. I like to keep it very simple because we don't want to get overwhelmed. And I would love to post the information that you're sharing about classes for parents. And where can people find you who are listening on Zoom if they want to get more information? Or
on Facebook, both on my personal page, on our organization's page, through Instagram is also fine. Through our general email, it's fine too, for the organization's email, which is support@magain-israel.org. I think those are probably the best ways. We also have a hotline number, but it's an Israeli number. So
so on Instagram, Magain, I think I tagged you.
Magain for Communities.
Magain for Communities. And if you're listening on Zoom, what is it under on Facebook?
It's also, they can search Magain for Communities. We also have a Facebook page for, it's mostly in Hebrew, for survivors and giving survivors voices. We share a lot of poems and articles written by survivors and people that care about this issue in the Israeli community called Lo Tishtok. they can also find there, or my personal Facebook page is just Shauna Erinson.
Okay, so I'll get that information from you and I'll post it in my
Sure.
stories. I hope this has been helpful. Whoever's watching, keep coming back with your questions. This is an overwhelming time. We'll probably take I'm not posting any of my typical playful parenting stuff. Even though that's important right now, I'm trying to get the questions, address the issues, and help mothers who are dealing with the fallout. And there is a huge fallout from the Chaim Walder story. Thank you so much for joining us. And let's see thank you for taking the time and for being out there, standing up for victims. And now, sadly, through this story, I found a huge resource that I can direct parents that I'm working with, especially for sexual abuse victims. It's a lonely place to be in, and I'm glad you guys are out there. So thank you
so much. Thank you for having me.
Okay. All right. We will be in touch. You can just message me with information. I'll post it right now.
Will do.
Okay. Thank you. And so goodbye. I'll speak to you.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
And for those of you here on Instagram, thank you. I hope the sound quality has been good. We were live 3 times. We got interrupted 10 minutes in, 50 minutes in, and then we just said, you know what, we'll try to do it this way. I hope you've been able to hear. If you have any questions, please feel free to message me, and let's educate each other. Let's help each other during this very difficult time. Let's learn the lessons that we need to, and let's teach our children that we are here as parents to create wonderful, happy families, resilient families where we can talk to our kids, not only with the good things, but when the hard things come up. And thank you so much. You are welcome. I take this, my role very seriously, and I feel like if there's anybody that can get some support, some help, we have to, in each one of us, in our own way, has to stand up and do what we can to support each other. So thank you for taking the time out as good parents, and this will come on live very shortly, and I'll post the information. Take care.